4 from data science class, we spent the semester researching how total emissions are released into the environment from food productions. Um, our question was, what specific category of foods cause the least amount of total emissions to be released throughout food productions? And by choosing different types of foods in your diet, you could possibly reduce and control the amount of emissions you release by consuming these products.
And here you can see is a visual model of the possible sources of emissions from our data set. We used Insight Maker to make this, and the blue boxes, the primitives, represent the different processes within the food production of each crop. From that, there are greenhouse gas emissions from each process. There's also waste produced, and it's important to consider the fossil fuel usage that goes into each process of farming these crops.
All right, so grains are one of the most popular crops produced and distributed throughout the world. They're used in a vast majority of all cooking applications, and with the heavy use associated with these grains comes a massive amount of carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere, mostly through farming, land use change, and processing. Overall, the average emissions from grains is 1.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide, and oatmeal was found to have the highest emissions of grains with 1.6 kilograms of carbon dioxide.
The next category of crops that we analyzed was oils. So this included soybean oil, palm oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, and olive oil. The mean total emissions from these was 5.36 kilograms of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere, which is a very high number. And from breaking down each category of the process of farming these crops, you can see that farming and land use change released the most emissions. And of the oils, the palm oil released the most total emissions.
So when comparing grains to oils, we found that oil produces on average 75.7% more carbon dioxide than grains do. So oils produce 5.36 kilograms of carbon dioxide, while grains produce only 1.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So one way you could be more environmentally sustainable would be to use a minimal amount of oil while cooking, or finding an alternative oil such as nut butters, purees, or sauces. However, if you still want to use oil, either sunflower or rapeseed oil would be the best of these options.
I also compared the total emissions of oils versus the total emissions of meats. And you can see there's a very big difference. The average total emissions of meat production is 72.3% higher than that of the production of oils. You can also see by looking at the graphs that beef and lamb produces much more than other meats such as fish or shrimp. So it's important to understand that eating different types of food can have an effect on the emissions released into the environment.
Fruits are not only delicious, but they are also environmentally friendly. We look at 6 different categories of fruits like tomatoes, apples, bananas, and berries, and their average carbon emissions was about 0.76 kilograms. From all the fruits, apples produce less carbon emissions, which was about 0.3 kilograms. Veggies are also environmentally friendly. We took a look at different types of veggies such as peas, onions, and leeks, and their average carbon emissions was about 0.46 kilograms. And from all the veggies consumed, peas have the highest emission rates of all the veggies. So when comparing fruit to veggies, as we know that they are both beneficial to our health, we came to the conclusion that veggies are more environmentally friendly than fruits because the emission of fruits was about the double amount of that of veggies.
Now, when comparing meat to fruit, found that the total greenhouse emissions from producing meat averaged to 19.34, while the average total emissions from producing fruit was about 0.766, concluding that meat produces 96% more total emissions than fruit. On this slide, there's visual representation of the different types of fruit compared to the different types of meat. I would like to point out the scales on these graphs. As you can see, for the fruit, the scale doesn't even reach to 1. And for the meat, the scale reaches all the way to 50.
So here we have a comparison of the top 5 foods of all food products. And we can see that the mean from them is 1.58 kilograms of CO2. And right underneath that, we see the individual emissions from each category. And we can see that farming produces the most emissions out of all the different categories. And another thing to note is that the total emissions from rice is about 4.0 kilograms of CO2, and potatoes comes at 0.3, which is almost 13 times less than what rice produces. So maybe instead of cooking up a side of rice, have some potatoes on the side instead.
And at the end of our analysis, we concluded that meat was the top producer of total emissions in food production, and that there can be benefits to switching to vegetarian or just reducing daily intake of high emission meats. We found that beef produces 79% more total emissions than fish and shrimp combined. So just cutting beef out of your diet could reduce your carbon footprint, or by strictly switching to a fish and shrimp diet or a pork only diet, the total emissions released into the environment could be significantly less. For our goal through this analysis would just be reaching an environmental sustainability level in the food production industry. This would be a great accomplishment for society today and how we're trying to change to environmentally sustainable productions.